is a sensory-rich environment like Times Square a better for vipassana than solitary confinement? Why don't you take the middle path? I would say the middle path is a better environment. Because you're not always in Times Square, and you're not always in solitary confinement, but most of the time you're somewhere in between, right? In your neighborhoods, or in the town, even in your own house, if you got some kids or something. So, but the solitary confinement maybe some of the most extreme ones, but as far as prisons go, there's more noise in a prison than in Times Square. Anyway, for vipassana, that's why I don't necessarily recommend too quiet of a place for meditating, or to have like the perfect place devoid of any noises, because that's artificial. And you've got to train yourself to learn how to deal with, put up with, and eventually just let go of any types of sensory impingements wherever they arise, and we don't know when or where or what is ever going to arise around us. So to practice meditation in all kind of different places is a good training. When I was first practicing, I was in India, of all places. Now that's a good place to meditate. Meditate in the Calcutta Howrah meditation train station. If you can meditate there and keep your mind, then you can meditate anywhere on earth. And I used to have a little practice. It's called meditation on a dime. And that was a practice where, just going around, or at any time, somebody said, oh, let's sit to meditate. Okay, boom, immediately, just sit down and sit for 1 hour, not move, no matter where it was, at a train station or anywhere. And that you should be able to sit down and just endure whatever might be going on, for a certain period of time. Maybe not a whole hour, but anyway, at some time. And not say, oh, I can't meditate here, it's too noisy, or it's too hot, or it's too cold, or too many mosquitoes. I used to also deliberately meditate in places where there were lots of mosquitoes, and let them bite me, and other things, to overcome that kind of fear and just learn how to tolerate them. Because everybody's waiting for the perfect place to meditate, or the right conditions, and you rarely ever find them. So that's why people keep on excusing why they can't meditate. Well, it's too noisy here, or it's too this or that. So it's good to meditate in the different types of environments, and not be too attached to have a quiet place and so on. Although we try to find a place again that's middle path, not absolutely quiet necessarily, and not total chaos. Now for shamatha meditation, yes, you need normally you need a very quiet place, because there thorns are the enemy, and other distractions are considered, the enemy, because you're trying to just stay on one tiny object. But in Vipassana, that's not the case. How can I know if I'm suppressing my anger and disappointment or in denial? Well, it takes a lot of practice to be able to make that discernment. And in the beginning, we may be suppressing sometimes some of our emotions in certain situations, but normally in mindfulness practice, we allow the emotion to come up, like anger, and we know that we're angry. We acknowledge, okay, this is anger. And feel what it's doing. You feel what it's doing in the body. Your muscles are getting tense, or some heat is arising, or your stomach is tight, or there's always symptoms. Normally, some physical symptoms to many of our emotions, especially like anger and so on. So you observe them, and you go, okay, relax, and then say, well, why? Again, analyze that. Why am I getting angry? And so on, and but like lashing out on the anger, that's usually not the skillful. So in a way, you might have to, in a certain situation, like if you're confronting an individual, and some negativity and so on, then really you have to monitor those sensations and thoughts in your mind, but also you don't want to, like lash out or just, get into a heated, angry argument with somebody, because usually that doesn't really help much either. So at certain times, it might be necessary to kind of just, suppress, let's say, lashing out or a situation like that, but then later on deal with it. Like especially if two people are both angry and trying to, that never works. No problems are ever solved out when people try to solve the problem in the midst of their emotions. They've got to first pause and stop and calm down, cool down, and so that they can more clearly see the situation and then try to talk more calmly from a more calm space. But then again, the emotions might get churned up again. So you've got to constantly monitor yourself, and maybe the other person isn't doing that. Maybe they're the one. But try not to react to somebody else's anger, because usually it takes two to tango, and so people want feedback from others. So they might getting angry from you and expecting a response, but if you just kind of remain passive, and they might continue for a few moments, but then because you're not giving them any feedback, they may just calm down and go away. Or at least you won't fan their flames more by retorting to them. Like one time I was in a park in Los Angeles at a Hare Krishna big kind of rally they were having in a park, and I just went there because I was down at the beach anyway, and I was just walking through, like I am, and there was three guys sitting over on a bench, and they were inebriated. They had beer cans in a paper bag, and then they saw me, And then they started talking to each other, and they started, how inebriated people kind of behave, right? And then two of them were egging the other guy to come over to me and harass me. So this one guy came over to me and kind of got in my face, and he was trying to look around to find my Hare Krishna ponytail. I didn't have one. He thought I was a hard Christian, because they have little ponytails like that. And those guys were saying, his two friends were saying, hit him, and the guy was kind of like, but I was just standing there, kind of just vibing him, kind of sending him metta, may you be peaceful, may you calm, not loudly, just in my own quietly. And I wasn't reacting, I wasn't like showing any type of fear. And the guy kept on provoking, like wanting to see some response, but I was just not responding, and the other guys were egging him on to, push me or whatever, or pull off my robe or whatever. But anyway, little by little, he kind of just calmed down, and he backed away, and he went away. So I've encountered these kind of situations a few times, because this is a kind of a target for some kind of people. So anyway, there's all kind of situations you may get in when you have to rely on your kind of instincts and in your practice to not to get into it. And another time, I was walking down the street going to a temple in this Crenshaw in Los Angeles. It's kind of a seedy area, but there was a Buddhist temple there. And I was walking down a street, I was wearing my sandals and had a freshly shaven head, in my robe. And then there was three guys, big African-American guys, standing there, shucking and jiving, if you know that term. Playing their boombox. They had a car stopped on the side of the road and playing rap music. And they saw me coming, and they blocked the street. They blocked the sidewalk, blocking the sidewalk, which is the only place I could walk. So I just kept walking, and I saw them. I just kept walking mindfully. And then I got up about, 6 feet from them, and then just sort of paused and stopped. And then I mindfully put off my sandals. Then they said, "Okay, man, it's cool. They thought I was kung fu, and I was getting ready to fight, because I don't know kung fu. I was pulling their bluff. I was kind of calling their bluff, but it worked, because they're all watching the kung fu movies back in the day, the television shows. So in a way, that kind of helped me. And they opened up, they let me through. Anyway, so, there's all kinds of situations you may find yourself in terms of how you're going to react in various situations. Would you speak a little more about the process and techniques of releasing attachment to the 5 aggregates and moving into pure awareness during the meditation? It's just practice, and it's also cultivating those 3 levels of wisdom. First, knowing what the aggregates are, being able to identify them very quickly in your meditation. Just make that a whole meditation in itself. You sit down and say, okay, I'm just going to focus on trying to identify. Okay, you're feeling the body, right? Okay, that's the material aggregate, the 4 elements: hardness, softness, heat, the body. Sounds of the material element. visible vibrations of the material element, smells, tastes, various sensations. So, when you hear a sound, it's just, it's a sound element. And when you see a feeling, you feel your mind kind of cringing because of a sting or an ant biting you, or pain, or just a painful feeling. Or if there's a pleasant feeling, you feel the cool breeze on your skin on a hot day, you can kind of see that tendency for a pleasant feeling. Okay, pleasant feeling. Then how does it affect your mind and the perception? You hear a sound, the mind identifies, oh, that's a bird, it's this. Okay, perception. And you keep on training yourself. And then reaction. You see, then the reaction, you want to think about some sankhara, habit formation. Or if you move the body or scratch, sankhara. And you understand how every time you practice those, it strengthens the habit. And then, of course, the ego consciousness. So it's not that difficult, but you have to basically kind of learn those simple, words, and then understand how they affect you. What kind of a grip do these things have on your mind? And so you have to study that. And then, not all the aggregates are bad. We have to use them in the daily life, and we have to, do a lot of things. So but it's understanding the ones that trip you up. The ones that, because of the attachment, you get attachment because you think these aggregates are you. But instead we see these aggregates as simply conditioned phenomena. They're not really, in the deepest sense, mind, because they happen by themselves. See how these things arise by themselves. You're not doing that. You're not asking that painful feeling to arise. You're not asking that perception to arise. It happens automatically. And so you study them. And then because of that, the mind will stop reacting to them so much. And when you stop reacting to them so much, then gradually this buffer zone of awareness arises, this kind of space between the knower and the known that I talked about today, right? You stop jumping right to the known, you create that buffer zone where you start to, then the awareness is there in the middle. When you stop reacting to the object, then, and there's just the observing, that's when you start to actually feel the sense of that just awareness without all the reactivity and so on. And then, and as you do that more and more and more, that just, that deepens and deepens, and then finally, because of that, the sense of self will begin to, fade away. And you can understand how, there's ego consciousness, and then there's awareness, or what we call pure awareness. And there's a Pali term for that, anidasana vijnana, which is signless consciousness. But it's basically that kind of just pure awareness. It's not creating any signs or marks about the objects and so on. So the consciousness has the ego with it. But when that ego fades away, or not very active, at least the way I use the terms, then I like to call it awareness. But really, consciousness and awareness are the same phenomena, except for consciousness is dominated by the sense of the I, where awareness doesn't have so much of the I mixed into it. It's more of an open, expansive feeling. So it's just, practice. And not only while you're meditating, but, even out in the world too. When you catch your mind, just try to recall that. Oh, what aggregate is this? Okay. I mean, you don't have to say that, but it helps in the beginning. And just to observe how the mind gets, especially when you're walking down the street, because the eyes always want to look at this, look at this. When people pass, or looking at shopping and so on, Go in a supermarket, the mind is, all these perceptions, hundreds, thousands of them popping out because everything is different. So you go in the supermarket, right? And you're standing there, just doing standing meditation, looking at things. And then, you're just about ready to, go out and pick up an object, lifting, reaching. And all of a sudden a hand comes in from this direction, somebody else, they grab the last box of Cheerios. Emptiness. So there's lots of fun and games that you can do with the Dhamma. We got to make Dhamma fun. Dhamma has to be fun. Everybody thinks it's a drudgery. I have to always think about the aggregates. Is the supreme self of the Veda tradition in contrast with the no self of the Buddhism? Can both beliefs complement each other? Well, that's a debate that scholars probably would get into. But in the yogic Veda tradition, the concept of cosmic consciousness or whatever else they call it, cosmic consciousness and so on. Or supreme self, of course, they call it Atman or Brahman and so on. I mean, in a sense that even that Atman or Brahman is no doubt a very exalted and expansive and state of mind. But the Buddha coined the term anatta as a contrast to the Hindu term atta or atman, right? But there's jiva atman and para atman. Jiva atman means the individual ego. Para atman means beyond that. So, a person could see that, that sounds very much similar to the idea of the anatta, where the ego fades away, but there's still something there. There's still, nibbana exists. It's a state that is, and so it's very easy to equate those. And I myself wouldn't even get debates about people. Let them debate it, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily very far off. But people have different experiences and they will interpret, even within the Hindu yogic tradition, there's different concepts about that because they personalize deities like Krishna and other types of deities. But it's complex. But I wouldn't bother getting in debates with people about that and so on. You have your understanding and let other people argue about it. I have a 3-year-old son. Any tips for helping to raise a mindful child? Yes. Practice mindfulness yourself in front of the child. Because childs just mimic the parents for usually when they're young, they imitate the parents. And if they see you sitting quietly, on the floor, meditating every day, and you come over, and play with you, but finally maybe they'll sit down, and you could, why don't you sit down? depending on how old they are. 3 years old, maybe kind of young, but tell them to sit down for 20 seconds and not to move or count their breaths or something. But mainly the parents have to set the example. If you want your children to practice mindfulness or learn to meditate, they've got to see you doing it. Because if they don't, and you tell them to do it, and you're not doing it, they're not going to do it, generally. So that's the best tips I would give you. And of course, 3 years old may be a little bit too young for a child to understand, but certainly by the time they're 5 or 6, you start mentioning some things like tell them to pause and just pause and take a few breaths. Actually, teaching them to take deep breaths will be wonderful, because that's like a trick. You teach them to tell them, breathing is, you have to live, you have to take deep breaths to live. Or something good, the good benefits of deep breathing. So they'll start doing that, and that'll make them calm, because that's the effect of deep breathing. And so you kind of indirectly calm them by telling them just to take deep breaths. The doctor said, take some deep breaths. And then you show them how to do it. Or sit down with them. Just by doing that alone will calm them down, just a little bit. And then once they're a little bit calming down, after the taking the deep breaths, like I've been having you do for some time. How many people find that helpful when I told you to stand there and do that breathing for even 5 or 10 minutes, and even talked you through it, follow the in-breath down to the in, feel that pause, and then the in-breath. Probably if I hadn't have talked you through it, you wouldn't have done it. Or you wouldn't have done it very long, or so on. And that's why I do that several times over, hopefully so that you'll actually see what a good thing it is, and then make the effort to want to do it on your own. I still can't believe why doctors don't teach people to do that. I can't believe it. They're doctors, for heaven's sakes. They're getting there? Taking a long time. Yes. You mentioned that a retreat of this length may not be long enough to produce deep insights. Are you referring to the stages of insight? How long of a retreat is needed for significant progress into deeper insights? Well, I meant the length of this retreat is probably not enough to develop the consistency of mindfulness and concentration, and the depth of that mindfulness and concentration to be able to see the crystal clear arising and vanishing of different mind moments. That usually takes a lot longer. I mean, you can get a general sense and a vague sense of it, and be aware of many things coming and going, but when you actually see a crystal clear arising and vanishing, it's shocking, because it's so clear and kind of just jumps out of the blue. It's that clear sometimes. And also to be able to sustain it, or to the point where the sense of the self, starts dissolving, or the feeling of the body dissolves. Some people may have some of that, but especially the sense of the self dissolving and experiencing that very vast type of awareness without much of a sense of an I or anything inside. So that usually takes more time, because it depends on the strength and the consistency of maintaining that in a present moment awareness. But how many of you have noticed progress since the first day until this day in kind of doing it? So unfortunately, it's, because of the time limit, and this is the Vasa season, so actually I'm not supposed to be away from my monastery for more than 7 days, so I had to make it only 6 days. But like when I go to Germany, Germans are real good meditators. They like to meditate, and they demanded a 2-week course. They've been going there for 30 years teaching retreats at one place, and usually it was 10-day courses, and now they're wanting 2-week courses because they see that the difference. So there's a big difference between a week in retreat and even a 6-day retreat, and there's more of a difference on a 10-day retreat, and there's more of a difference on a 2-week retreat, and even a 1-month retreat. I mean, IMS, they have 3 months retreats even, and they're full because there's people that wanting to, seeing the benefit of keeping it going. Since I've been meditating, it seems the feeling tones of my experience have shifted more to neutral feelings rather than, unpleasant ones, or being disturbed by unpleasant ones, a more neutral feeling. How do I know this is truly equanimity? And that I'm not just more checked out in a kind of spiritual bypass. Okay, sit outside at 5:30 in the afternoon and let mosquitoes bite you. I don't think you'll be spaced out, and you can see if you have equanimity or not. That's why I used to do it in Sri Lanka. It has to be, you should be able to know. You can feel like, when you, let's say an ant is crawling on you, starting to bite you, or a mosquito, or maybe a spider, you feel a spider crawling on your neck or something. You can feel all these fireworks going off in your mind, and reactions, but you have to start with more, milder types of unpleasant sensations, especially like a strong itches, or sometimes you feel even a little drop of water running down your head, and especially right in here, it's a very sensitive area. You almost feel like fireworks are going off, and it, jolts your whole nervous system. Sometimes certain stinging or biting sensation. Of course, a lot of that is just automatic reaction, nervous system reaction, but you just have to gauge yourself. I mean, the equanimity, you'll still feel the sensation as being unpleasant, but you're not tensing up about it, and you're relaxed through it, and you just allow those unpleasant sensations to come through. That's also equanimity. But you can change what used to be a painful sensation, you can change them to gradually become a pleasant sensation. Or what used to be a pleasant sensation, you can change it into what might be a neutral sensation, or even a painful sensation. That's called mastery of the mind, when you're able to kind of do that. But like what you used to not like, you can change your mind about it and like it. Like I did with avocados, if any of you know that, my famous avocado story. And other things. So, and like itches are wonderful. Itches are one of the best meditation sensations. Because an itch is not really that painful. It's just an itch, right? It's unpleasant, but it's not going to kill you, and it's it's not really like a serious toothache or something, right? So you can learn to relax around them, and when you actually learn to kind of just feel them and feel all the little sensations connected with that itch, and seeing the mind kind of tensing up, but you keep relaxing around it, and when you gain good experience of that, you can actually enjoy it. Enjoy itches, because you see how your mind is improving to tolerate them, and it keeps you awake also. So they're good for that. Painful sensations are good, especially for people who have lots of sleepiness in meditation. And so, feeling different pains and itches, it's a great, meditation on the aggregate of sensation and also perceptions, the aggregate of feelings and perceptions. Because the mind is thinking, oh, this dirty fly, or this, whatever it is, or I'm gonna get Nilambi knees or something, So you just see the mind, freaking out, being able to laugh at it, just chuckle. Look at this crazy mind just freaking out. Cool. Rather than getting so serious and so on. You gotta learn to laugh at yourself. The cosmic humor of the crazy, fickle mind. How important is it for spouses or partners to share a common belief system? Any advice? Well, it probably would help compatibility and so on if people had common viewpoints and interests. Because then there may not be so much conflict of interest when it comes to doing things. If two people, are like to meditate and like to go hear Dhamma talks and this and that, then that's of course can be a good thing, because then both of you are practicing the Dhamma, then you can help each other, because you know what the difficulties are of the other person, and they know yours, and you can help each other in that way. So it's wonderful if they had if you have that. But if not, it can cause problems, especially in the beginning, because I've heard lots of people come and ask me questions and tell me stuff in their life. And that one person may meditate, the other one may not, or may not have much interest in the Dhamma, but kind of just tolerates their practice in the beginning, especially in a new relationship, because sometimes people may say, oh yeah, go ahead and meditate, that's okay, but later on they may be holding something, and your meditation may threaten them, because they're afraid you might wind up becoming a monk or a nun, or may lose interest in things they want to do. So there's lots of problems that have developed in these kind of issues between partners or spouses who don't meditate. Or there could be, like in a Buddhist country, like for Buddhists, they both might be Buddhists, but one may be a nominal Buddhist, and the other one may be into meditation. But at least because the one is a nominal Buddhist, they know that meditation is good, so they're apt to at least tolerate their spouse, meditating, and so on. But the best kind of test or benefit is that some spouses will tell the other one to go to retreat, because they know when they come back from a retreat they're much nicer. they're more calm and relaxed. So even though they might not be a Buddhist or meditate, they know that at least when he goes on retreat or she, and they come back, at least for a week or so, they're a little bit more tolerable, and so on. So they may encourage the person to go on retreats for that reason.
My wife kind of pushes me out the door.
Honey, I think it's time for a retreat. How can meditation help with physical pain, such as cancer pain? Well, probably you would have to be highly developed in concentration to be able to kind of, endure the kind of pains associated with these very, difficult, painful types of diseases. But of course, being mindful of it is certainly a good first step, that you're mindful of the pain, and you try to have metta to the body, and by practicing meditation, you might be able to tolerate a little bit more. But still, in those severe types of things, then it depends on the individual. But probably, unless you attain formless jhana, where you lose all feeling or consciousness of your body, then you could probably tolerate it for several hours at a time when you're in that kind of jhanic, especially formless jhanic state, where there's no more body at all with the mind. And the Buddha did that. But the Buddha could go in and stay in those formless jhanic states for days, several days at a time if he wanted to. But the average person is not going to be able to do that. So, it's difficult. But anyway, it can help. But I'm not saying it's going to be that person would be able to totally do without some kind of medication on it. I think this is the question that was left over from last night. Would you please elaborate further on balancing vipassana and samatha practice and how the two complement one another? And I think I did talk about that today when I was talking about right mindfulness and right concentration. In meditation, if you have too much samadhi, that means the mind gets too quiet, then either the person could get attached to that quietness, or they could also kind of just space out, or if the mind gets too quiet, they could kind of just nod out or even go to sleep. or at least getting too quiet, then again your attachment to just wanting to be quiet and feeling some blissful feeling may be there. So you have to kind of wake it up by, paying more attention to other things. Otherwise, if you just sit there in some, quiet space, as I've already mentioned, okay, that might be fine and dandy, but you're not really making progress in, transforming your sankharas and dealing with pains and other types of distractions, like the jack-in-the-box thing I was mentioning. But if you have too much mindfulness and you're aware of too many things and not enough concentration, then the mind can get too much excited and kind of, also kind of be off and get too distracted. So therefore, they have to be balanced by the vipassana helps you to stay more awake, so you don't get lost into too much stillness or quietness. But the calmness, a certain amount of calmness, will help to keep the mind tempered and also keep it from getting too distracted. That's why I always mention, ideally, to keep that contact with the breathing. You develop the mindfulness of breathing, but especially here, because when you're feeling the sensation here, you get into too much extreme quietness, and you tend to not feel much other things. And people get attached to that, or you see a little nimitta and a light, and you want to try to hold on to that and focus on that. So, but when you're developing the awareness of the breathing in this area, you don't get drawn into so much quietness, but you do get concentration, because it's still in a very limited area. But it helps you to stay awake enough that you can notice other things. But that continuous connection to the breath kind of in the background, even if it's just there, 75% or 80% of the time, you're kind of feeling the breaths in between, that'll hold the mind calm enough to where it can practice the moment-to-moment attention without getting overwhelmed by the speed, when you build up the speed of perception. This was an experience I had when I was in the army, when I was just 20 years old, 21 years old. Even in Vietnam, I had some LSD sent over to me, because a lot of the GIs were taking drugs. And they had a lot of good hashish and Thai Buddha grass. And so we were always stoned, just to get by. Right? And but one time I had taken this LSD, and I was sitting in my room, and all of a sudden I got this, this barrage of images, thoughts and images coming at me like a freight train barreling down at me, which was anicca. If I would have had that now, it would be a perfect anicca sanya, because these images were just flashing by like that, but like they were barreling right down on me, like a kaleidoscope. You know what a kaleidoscope is, right? And I freaked out because I didn't know how to handle it. I thought I was going mad. And I had to tell somebody to come here, pour a bucket of water on my head. I got to come down, because I thought I was going to lose my mind. Yeah. So, so in that sense, I didn't have any samatha, to temper that. That's a danger with people that take drugs and drug experiences. They don't know how to handle these types of experiences that come to them, and they wind up freaking out, or doing some other things, jumping off a building because they think they can fly. what is the role of sankhara in the contact, feeling, craving process? Can you explain? The sankhara is basically the becoming. So it's craving, grasping, and becoming. The grasping and becoming are the sankhara. Actually, if there's time, I was going to touch on that tomorrow. But basically, it's not even contact. It's just basically craving, grasping, and becoming. These are what's called the karmic kama-bhava process. And so the feeling triggers off the craving, either the craving to get away from a painful feeling or the craving to hold on to a pleasant feeling. So that initial craving is just that initial desire. But then, and if you have mindfulness, you can just be aware of that, desire, and maybe it'll just vanish and you won't react to it. But if you're slow, then the craving turns into grasping. And grasping means the thinking about the object. The craving is just the initial gut reaction, the reaction of wanting to get rid of something or the wanting to get away from it. It might not even involve much thought at all. But the grasping is in thinking about it. You start thinking about it. Yes, I have to have this object. How am I going to get it? Planning, scheming, all that's part of grasping. Planning, scheming, conniving, figuring out what you're going to do. And then it comes to a point of you got to make a decision. Are you going to do it or not? Are you going to scratch that itch or just let it be? And that's the sankhara. If you give in and you scratch the itch, that's the sankhara. But the sankhara is also all those thoughts connected with the grasping. So both grasping and becoming in the wheel of dependent origination, that's really the sankharas are taking there. That's where they manifest. And actually, I usually give a whole talk about that subject, but I won't have time tomorrow about it. But basically, craving is not that bad. Don't worry so much about craving. Craving is just the initial urge to, want to scratch, or the initial urge to, on a hot day to go drink a Coca-Cola or something. And if you have good mindfulness, you can, kind of contemplate, well, the itch is not that bad. Okay, I'll just watch it, and you kind of just, observe it, and it vanishes. Or you say, well, there's no Cokes anyway, never mind. And you forget about it. So, craving by itself is not a big deal. It's the grasping. You grasp the idea, yes, I have to have it. I'm going to die without that. My life depends on that. And then all the planning, scheming, and conniving, how are you going to, get that? That's where you have to apply mindfulness. And that's where you can turn the tide, is in applying all of your Dhammic knowledge, your wisdom, to try to weaken that grasping, and so it doesn't lead to becoming. Because the grasping leads up to the point of you're going to decide. You contemplated all the pros and cons. And if you have enough wisdom, hopefully you won't do, especially the negative action, the sankhara. But if you don't and you give in and to change the posture or itch to scratch or whatever else it may be, then you increase the strength of that sankhara. So really, it's what you can do in vipassana meditation. Basically, we're contemplating those three things: craving, grasping, and becoming. You can't do anything about feeling and contact much, because as soon as the feeling comes up, there's already craving normally, and you've got to be aware of that and the grasping about contemplating what are you going to do about this unpleasant feeling. You can't prevent feelings You can't prevent contact from coming, because the senses are always open and it's going to come. You have no control over that, for the most part. And you don't have control over the feelings that arise. And you don't have control over the craving that arise. Until you're at least anagami. That means the third stage of enlightenment is only when craving has been totally eliminated. So don't worry about it too much. People think, oh my God, I got to get rid of the craving. How can I become a Buddhist? This is crazy. No. So don't worry about it. Worry about grasping. That's what we pay attention to. And the becoming. So that's the critical time. The shift between grasping but the shift between craving, where it turns into grasping, and if you're too late, then you have the last chance where grasping turns into becoming. Because that's where the karma, the heavy type of karmic comes, when you actually do the action. Thinking about it is a kind of karma too, but it's the actual action. You could think about telling a lie. Maybe you're thinking about it. Should I tell the lie or not? Should I cheat on my income tax or not, right? Worrying about that, and then thinking about all these things. And then you make a decision to do it. Are you going to do it or not do it? So that's where we pay attention to. Don't think about getting rid of all your craving and desires. You mitigate them, you keep them in check. And, not all desires are necessarily bad. The simple ones, the simple things for life, and so on, like the middle path. Don't deny yourself any type of little desire or creature comfort, but you have to be selective about it, And, keep some that are not really harming anybody or harming yourself too much. Now, if you want to put a little sugar in your coffee, or want to drink Starbucks coffee instead of Nescafe, okay, no big deal, right? If you have the money to buy it, it's okay. But the main thing is keeping these things in check and not letting them, get out of proportion until it becomes an obsession. And then it starts interfering with, your other things. If karma moves forward across lifetimes, why does it seem that we are always born into ignorance? Because the ignorance is carried over from lifetime to lifetime. When you die, the ignorance that you still have in your mind, that means your self-centered clinging and your sankharas, attachment and aversion and other things, they're carried over into the next life. And if you keep practicing ignorance in the next life, it just keeps rolling over and over, until at some point you wake up, you hear the Dhamma, and you contemplate it, and you say, enough is enough. You're fed up with ignorance, because it pushes and bullies you around to doing things that cause you suffering. This is the whole thing about that verse that I chant after meditation. All things are impermanent. When one sees this with the eye of wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. You become disenchanted with it. You become disenchanted with ignorance. It keeps pushing and bullying you around to do these unskillful karmic actions and to get more addicted to pleasure and pain reactions, and keeps the ego, imprisoned by the ego. So there's an important word called nibbida. It means becoming disillusioned by that, or being wearied by all this, this stuff that is going on in your mind. And that's when people, then start getting interested in trying to do something about in terms of your Dhamma, learning to meditate. But some people like that ignorance, and they're just, they don't know any other way, and, so, even though it's suffering, they keep on just, staying caught in that wheel of suffering. So, it's only that point where something wakes up in you, and you can never tell when that's going to happen. Like with me, I gave you that example of myself, right? When I was following the hippie trail and staying stoned on drugs and getting put in prison in Afghanistan. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know. I knew I wanted to get off drugs, but I didn't know. And then, I went to Sarnath and started to remember what the Buddhas say about meditation and so on. And then this guy comes to me and starts talking about meditation, and that just opened up something, just snapped something inside. So that can happen to anybody, really. But you never know what that would happen. But you have to be open, to, if something presents itself, to be open to want to try something. But if you're restrained by, particular beliefs that say, no, that, I shouldn't do that because that's another religion or this and that, and unfortunately, it's okay. So, that's not a question. Okay. So, take a deep breath. Come back and touch base. Yeah, just go ahead and stand up.